guys, Freaky Finance here. Last week we talked about Square, and this week we're going to go into Google. Google is a company, I think we talked about on the channel before, but it's predominantly advertising orientated. So slightly similar to Pinterest, obviously different in terms of scale and dominance. And a lot of their advertising is performance based as well as brand based. So you get a mixture of both here. It basically dominates the revenue when we jump to the numbers. We're going to do a 5-year trend just like we did with Square. Now I do own Google, and that's right here. So you can see Google, I own that one. There's a couple other little trades that I've started, but Truist and Vail and Wendy's and Weibo, but some bonds for extra cash just in case. But Uber in the long Uber, I mean Uber too, still in that. Google in the long run, it's just it looks really strong. Well, before we jump to the 5-year history, one of the reasons why I'm doing the video today is a lot of online is basically saying Google's model's challenged. And it's kind of funny because on one end you have the bears saying Google is a monopoly and it needs to be broken up. But then at the same time, they're also saying Google is under threat and going to be replaced by AI. And its search mode's going away. And I was like, okay, so they did both things at once, I guess. We're going to just go... First part, we're just going to break into the segments, and then we're going to kind of go try to answer that question, is Google dying or not? Short answer is, in my opinion, it's not. Obviously, that's why I own it. And we're going to go into some of the reasons why, especially why the video today, aside from Google I/O, which is also this week. So it's on top of mind for me. There's a couple good interviews with the CEO, Sundar, which are also pretty good. So I'm going to jump into that. So first off, how to make money, mainly advertising. They also have Google services, so beyond advertising. So that's your subscription, dominated by YouTube subscriptions. But they also have platforms and devices, so Pixel and Google Play. They also have a cloud segment, which is growing a lot faster. Margins on cloud have all improved after they started to extend the useful life of cloud and also the demand. And you're going to see a big backlog here. We don't go into too much detail about backlogs, but I view them favorably because it helps me know that the business is going to be there for a while. That's kind of the two larger segments. You can kind of see how it splits. So advertising was 66 billion of the 90 billion revenue in the latest quarter. So dominated again by advertising. But you can see Google's subscriptions at 10 billion, and that's dominated by YouTube growth. And then you have Google Cloud also growing. Actually, Google Cloud was finally bigger than YouTube subscriptions in this section. I want to say last year. Maybe it was the year before. But anyway, you can see 12 billion. And then other bets, which we're going to go into briefly for a little bit. And you can see the business is spread out pretty well. You have the United States, and then Europe, and then Asia Pacific region. Still dominated in US. You can see the growth has been more split up, but growing pretty well overall. To understand the business model, you kind of need to understand TAC, so traffic acquisition costs. But we're not going to go into too much detail, but basically what's kind of cool, especially now, I'm a Google Pro sub, what I can do is do deep research, and so you can ask queries and I can give you a 17-page report in this case, just talking about total acquisition costs and the trend over time. It was kind of cool how it went back all the way from when it started. 39% of its business was paid out to these for acquisition cost, and now we're down to the 21 and 23. That's worth bringing up. It's kind of cool just seeing how this works, especially this chart which it generated just kind of goes through the TAC rate over time. It's kind of been in this 20% range for a while, but it was interesting to see that when it first came up, it was much higher. And another thing you're going to notice, which I also thought was interesting, is the network members as a percent of total TAC has actually decreased lately. And that's actually helping the margin. So basically anytime they have to third party it out of their own platform, they make less money because there's another person in the game taking money. So that's one of the reasons why when we jump into the numbers, you're going to see margin expanding, is because the sales mix is improving. So there's actually seeing decrease in network member revenue, but we're seeing it increase still in the core revenue, which is a higher margin business. So that's worth bringing up here. It kind of talks about the channel mix here. And if I like the executive summary at the bottom, it's kind of like relies on two main pillars. So you have payments and distribution partners to ensure widespread availability of service, and then payments to the Google members who display network ads on their properties. So it's kind of how they get the reach that they have. That's a core thing to understand about Google, because it's going to show up in the COGS. It's the main expense It's actually shown scale over time because of this. Google's basically growing more on its own network than it is on third parties' websites. Monetization metrics is another fun one. So our paid clicks change, and then cost per click. So cost per click is kind of an interesting one, because you might be like, that sounds like it's Google's cost per click, but that's what they're charging the advertiser. So when you're able to take price 7% year over year, it tells you that there's a lot of demand still for advertising on Google search. And that's the main principle to look at if you're worried about search being replaced with AI. Now, there's a whole list of reasons why I don't think that's going to happen. Now, it could happen if Google was doing nothing, but given Google's, what they've done so far, they've already proven, and just the cash, the flexibility on the balance sheet, I just can't see how they just lose, especially when the market's already assuming probably a 50% probability that their search isn't going to be able to make up enough to recover from AI eating away at its moat. So what I did here is just take a picture, did the same thing, deep research, and basically I asked the program to tell me what this image meant, so what this monetization metrics chart meant. And so it was pretty interesting. So it's like, crucially, cost per click represents cost to advertisers for each click with their ads, while simultaneously constituting a direct revenue stream for Google. In summary, the reported monetization metrics suggest Google is effectively monetizing its dominant search platform. The company appears well positioned in the digital landscape. The capacity for Google to achieve 7% uplift in CPC, cost per click, within its search business, while still growing click volumes, speaks volumes. Before we go into the is Google dead seeming narrative, which is nice because it helps me explain why I'm getting a nice price relative to everything else in the market that's growing like it has. So this is what the market's saying is now worth 16 times forward earnings, or 16 or 17, depending on what you expect for this year. But the longer term, it's even cheaper, right? Just have to zoom out a few more years, and you're probably at 13 times 2 years forward. Anyway, it's an exciting company, and that's really why I want to do the video. You can see the growth. So this is the advertising ones in pink here, and you can just see the growth across all three segments. YouTube going from 19 billion to 36 billion. It's hard to do for a dying company. Google search going from 104 billion to 198 billion. Hard to do for a dying company. In terms of the year over year, up 23 billion. Increase in search queries from growth and adoption usage on mobile, and higher advertising spend. This is still secular because a lot of people don't understand the ad market still has a decent amount on linear TV. I mean, it's shrinking every year, but a lot of it's still going to Google, and Google has the highest return on ad spend there is. The king, right? It's that and Facebook maybe. So it's a beast, and it's not been replaced yet. That's what the numbers would tell you for the latest quarter. That's what it would tell you on a 5-year. Now, it doesn't mean it can happen, and the market's kind of telling you, hey, it's a risk, but it's I just look at this and I'm like, wow. And then here's the cool thing, or interesting thing. You can see Google Network's actually flatlined, and this is the lower margin business. So what you're going to see in terms of sales mix here, you can see the gross margin dollars just start creeping up from 56 to 58. And that's because less of their business is on third-party platforms and more is on their first core business that they actually own. Devices are actually growing quite well, often overlooked at Google, but 21 billion to 40 billion. It's not small. Oh, sorry, that's subs as well. So that's YouTube. A lot of that's driven by YouTube. Whenever I look at the notes from on the quarterly calls or the 10Ks, basically it just says largely from growth and paid subs for YouTube. Google Cloud's also, as most people know, growing materially well, 13 billion to 43 billion over the last 5 years. Then you have other bets, which isn't a profit center. It's a cost center. These are basically a whole bunch of stuff, and we'll jump into that maybe right now. But it's a whole bunch of things that Google has going on. It's one of the things I think is underappreciated at Google. During Google I/O, they probably ship more things than most startups would in a few years, and they just did it in a quarter, or even just the last 6 months. Google's not doing nothing, as AI is supposedly going to take search away from them. But at the same time, I get a 16 times forward, which is nice for a company that's gone from 182 billion to 350 billion. But anyway, let's talk. So DeepMind is the most excited one for me, that and Isomorphic Labs. These are both really strong in terms of what I think they can offer in the future. I mean, Waymo gets a lot of attention, especially lately, because it is we're seeing it more often. People are actually seeing it on the roads more, with especially with the partnership with Uber, so you can get dispatch, more access, and it's actually cheaper. So people are picking up on that, and it's a cool thing to do. So that is interesting. We'll see how that plays out. I'm not sure the economics on it, but it is something that's there and available, and it is interesting. So it'll be interesting to see how society does it, whether Waymo stays as like a ride sharing thing or whatnot. But Moonshot Factory, so they have their own incubation center. And then, I mean, isomorphic, the reason why I'm focusing on that one is AlphaFold, right? They've just basically shot ahead, in my mind, what gene editing is going to be able to do in the next 10 years, just with Google alone. It's done more for mankind than most other companies have, for free, by the way. Anyway, so there's just a couple things there from ChatGPT, and I thought that was worth bringing up. So that's not a profit center, it's a cost center. So while there's some revenue here, it's not enough to offset the cost that's going into it. So yeah, anyway, you can see total revenue 182 billion, 350 billion in 5 years, so hard to see for a dying company. COGS going from 84 billion to 146 billion. That's basically the cost of doing business. So traffic acquisition cost is increasing, but you're noticing that it's increasing less than revenue is increasing, because more or less revenue is from the Google network, more from their core offering. So anyway, you can see a really nice trend on the GMD line, right? Going from 97 billion to 203 billion in 5 years. R&D actually did show some scale, but they're partially just because there's severance in 2023. They finally started to cut costs. So there's a little bit of a story here. So 2021 was too good to be true in acceleration. They hired after into the acceleration. Actually, the whole space did. They couldn't find any engineers. And so they staffed into a slowdown at the same time. So advertising actually slowed down in 2022. So it made the economics look poor. The stock market reaction was amazing. It went down to like $88 a share. Right now, that's $88 is technically 10 times today's earnings already, like last year's earnings rather. Right, so that's how crazy the market can get with Google, and it's just nice, right? Because you literally have a company that's growing like this, and then you have scale. So here's your business going from 282 billion to 350 billion, and you only have to spend 1.3 billion more on sales and marketing to do it. That's insane. or here, G&A. Your revenue is going from 282 to 350, and your G&A has gone from 15 to 14. You're actually down. Part of that is because they got slimmer. A lot of companies actually started to do some attrition. There is noise in this number because there's legal fees in 2023 of 1.3 billion. So it's one of the reasons why it goes up then down. Really, if you take this out, it goes 15.7, 15.1, 14.1. But you also have less of a footprint. So a lot of companies have actually reduced their office footprint. And then the operating income, right, going from 41 billion to 112 billion, like in 5 years. Very special. What else is there? We'll talk about taxes again, because that's kind of the reason why, like the videos even before Amazon, we kind of talk about the tax bill. Now let it pass, but we didn't know at the time. It still has to go through Senate, but whatever. Google was a beneficiary from the Trump tax bill last time in 2017 because of the accelerated depreciation and the R&D expensing that they allow. Google, as you can see, spends a lot on R&D, right? Almost $1 billion a week. Their capex, we haven't got down there yet, but is also more than $1 billion a week. It's probably going to be $80 billion this year, 75 or something. So a lot of money that, if the current tax bill, how it passes, will be a big benefit to Google. Actually got deep research from Google to actually dig into that for us. So we'll go into that after. But anyway, the share price gone back up lately, but it is pulled back from the tariff tantrums, even though the company doesn't actually have much impact from tariffs because it's advertising dollars. But advertising doesn't rise, so if a recession happens, advertising would be impacted. There's a reason why. Anyway, the share price and the diluted share count. You can see the fully diluted share count slowly go down. Buybacks have started to ramp up, especially in 2022, which is nice, especially when you're trading at only 16 times forward earnings. As it stands, the balance sheet's pretty strong, 95 billion in CCE, market securities, and the non-marketable investments at 37 billion. Google has a history of making strong investments, right? Like YouTube's a prime example. There's other things as well. And then another thing you're going to notice on the balance sheet is the PPE has really started to shoot up, and that's the CapEx spend. So there's a lot of server depreciation in here, to basically investment into AI to shore up their search, to shore up everything, as well as the cloud business as well, which is growing obviously from 13 billion to 43 billion for a reason. And cash flow from operations 65 billion to 125 billion. So CFO is up 2x in 5 years. CapEx is also up actually more than 2x in 5 years. So you can see they're actually accelerating their CapEx spend. However, the cash flow, free cash flow is very strong, right? 72 billion last year. And you can see over the last 5 years, they actually bought back 264 billion of itself, which people might not understand. That's a lot of money. So you can see the story here in some of the metrics. The revenue slows down, the multiple comes in, and as the thing accelerated, however, the multiple barely improved at this specific point, partially because of the tariff issues. Here you can see less scale in R&D because Google tends to invest a healthy amount in R&D, and other bets loses money. We talked about a lot of that is R&D in there. S&M, so sales and marketing, you can clearly see the scale. And G&A, you can clearly see the scale. EPS going from $3 to $8 is nice, right? And then a trailing P you're at 21. So I'm almost as cheap as 2022 was at the current point, even after a little bit of a rally from the lows of April. So still looks cheap relative to its long-term average. And that's on a trailing basis. Well, the business is actually re-accelerated, growing 14% on the top line, with the best margin it's ever had, with the best scale it's ever had. Now, Google never did the same kind of efficiency Meta and Twitter did. They did some attrition in 2023, but it wasn't like a hard, like, we're going to cut 20% of the workforce or 10% of the workforce or something crazy like Twitter, right, when they cut a material amount of the workforce. There wasn't anything like that. It was just more attrition. We're just going to slow hiring, and we're going to let people leave or retire. Google will benefit from the big tax bill. AI thinks the effective tax rate is going to get smacked to almost half in 2025. We're going to show that in a second. I thought it was funny. Google spends a lot in CapEx, so it's going to be a big beneficiary from that tax bill, as well as not just CapEx general, but U.S. CapEx and U.S. R&D, which are the point of the tax bill. It's very much U.S. focused. You must spend this money on U.S. in U.S. So there is that. And then the last comment here: dead companies don't push out or ship more than most startups in a single year. The key risk, so I was kind of like, how much is AI ad revenue per query? Like, how much is it equivalent to what we're currently making in traditional search? And AI, according to ChatGPT, thinks that it's already at parity, expected to grow. I mean, I made it analyze a couple other things, and supposedly Google believes AI can potentially exceed traditional monetization. We haven't seen that yet, but supposedly Sundar said AI overviews, which they have released, and more than 1.5 billion people already use it because it's kind of just there when you search for things. It's part of the output. Ad revenue per query is already at parity, which is exciting, right? If it's going to be replaced, it's already at least monetizable as much as current search is. And that's just a hybrid model. And that's not even it getting better yet, which it already is. Like, I couldn't do what I just did this week, even 6 months ago. And this is AI's take, my take. Yes, monetization will likely at least match traditional search, could surpass it, especially for high-intent commercial queries. AI can surface product info, services, and offer more precise and helpful ways. So this is something, and we've talked about this core thing before. We talked about it with the dispatcher model, with AI, with basically your matchmaking things. Whether you're matchmaking homes for Airbnb, you're matchmaking cars for Uber, you're matchmaking advertising for Google or Pinterest. And I feel like that part is not understood by the market, especially in advertising. They're just asleep. It's like we can literally personalize things at a like super granular level. This person likes these things. We're going to show him these things. And I just think your basically return on ad spend is going to go through the roof, which means they'll be able to take price. So the cost per click should continue to climb. So that's what I think. And we'll see what happens. It's definitely an exciting time. And then, do the number of queries increase or decrease? Most people know the answer to this, but it increases. So people actually spend more time on search with AI. Like, I spend more on ChatGPT. When I start going, I'll just keep digging. And with Google as well, I will just keep digging. And these deep research reports are just amazing. So it's almost like having a team of analysts to be like, what do you guys think? Right? Because I have my own thoughts, and then I can be like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that, or that's a cool trend. Like, it just makes a table for me. What's the history since Google started operations? But yeah, query volume should increase, which again actually drives ad dollars. And so does the time spent on the platform, technically, if they were going to go the engagement route, because it is more engaging. And there is more use cases as well. Like, I used search is just kind of basic, like where am I going, what's this, what's the menu for this. Like this, I can actually ask it hard questions now, and it can come up with decent answers, which are right now, that wasn't true a year ago, but they're right now pretty good. They're pretty well reasoned. So it's definitely improved, and it's probably better than me at certain things already. Let's jump into some more of their takes. So this is the innovation. So the Google I/O just happened, one of the reasons why we're doing the video. So that was very interesting. So here's some summarized facts. So Google, or Gemini AI 2.5 Pro is now number one model in LLM. New DeepThink, so that's what I've been using. And you can see the token use increases. AI overviews, already 1.5 billion users per month. That's huge, and that's because they already have Google search. So if people use Google search to search things, they're going to put an AI overview over top of it. People are innately reading now without even going below, and it has an impact at advertising dollars, right? We saw growth in Q1 of 7% in price and 2% in query volume. So there's that. Then you have the infrastructure. So they have their own TPUs. A lot of the companies have their own TPUs. They still use Google for GPUs, or Google, use NVIDIA for GPUs. You're starting to see even faster infrastructure with cheaper inference costs. Answer the queries cheaper on their end. There's a lot of things coming out. And then there is the still to be proven monetization at OpenAI level margins. And the mindshare, because I use both, right? Which is not the case for search currently, right? It's just basically Google, because Bing is crap. So that's just my thoughts. Obviously, CEO says AI is not disrupting Google. It's an evolution that Google is embracing. So they have an AI first strategy dating back to 2015, right? And that's him basically. It summarized the video. What I do is basically I take the transcript from a video and I put it into the AI, and I basically say summarize it, because I don't have time to listen to this hour presentation, and tell me what I need to know about XYZ. Is Google dead is the theme, right? And then it kind of goes into it. But I thought that was just interesting what it spits out. What else? In terms of the whales, I mean, it is a lot of Google. A lot of people own Google as a high ranking. Probably one of the more interesting names that picked it up was Seth, margin of safety guy, Seth Klarman, 9% holdings. So we actually agree now and then on certain things. So like we both picked up Dollar General pretty close. He picked it up a little bit earlier than I did. But I mean, that was a sick buy for this current environment. And then Google, I mean, just started buying it now. I just view it at this current point as pretty attractive, hence the video, especially given the recent IO information and given the tax bill passed. It just looks pretty good. So this is just me trying to be like, hey, what are the odds? Deep research, what are the odds of the Senate bill passing as it is? And AI thinks 60 to 70%, but it gives cool color, so I don't like it, whatever, sure, 67%. I think that's actually higher. That's just my opinion. This is just as the 100% bonus appreciation and allowing immediate R&D expensing, which are critical for Google. As you saw, the numbers are very big for Google for US CapEx and US R&D. And basically, the AI thinks that the R&D and the depreciation part of the bill are the less contentious parts of it. So they think if there's going to be renegotiations or leeway, it's going to be in other things, like the SALT cap and Medicaid and spending cuts and energy credits. That's what it thinks will be more contentious provisions that may be looked at. So I thought that was worth sharing. And then it kind of cool, like it creates its own tables, and it's like, hey, this is how many senators you need to pass it. Doesn't need to go through the filibuster. All this stuff, which is kind of cool, which I never was able to have before. And then I said, okay, assuming it passes the Senate, what's the impact on Google's financials in terms of an effective tax rate? And then it was kind of fun, right? So it's like the provisions on the bill are projected to deliver substantial, albeit temporary, primary 2025, 2029, positive impacts for Alphabet, for Google. The reintroduction of the 100% bonus depreciation would allow for immediate deduction of the full cost of qualifying assets such as servers and network equipment, significantly lowering the current taxable income. Similarly, the ability to immediately expense domestic R&D costs, a temporary reversal from the current 5-year amortization requirement, which basically killed biotech, by the way, would provide considerable tax relief, given Alphabet's extensive investment in innovation. Right. So I just like it, just words things well, and it summarizes things well, especially these conclusions. And then it's kind of, it tries to quantify it, because that was what I asked it to do. And he says these changes, or AI says these changes are estimated to result in a multi-billion-dollar annual reduction in the federal tax expense for Google, translates directly to an increase in operating cash flow and net income. and its effective tax rate is projected to decrease markedly, its word choice, during the years these provisions are active. For instance, illustrative calculations suggest annual tax savings in the range of 14 to 15 billion, potentially lowering the effective tax rate from around 17.3 in Q1 25 to around 8 to 9%. So that's what I think the market doesn't understand yet, is the impact on these things. But these big companies are huge, because this is literally what they do. They invest in America. These are American companies, and the tax bill is very much raw America. Just want to share that point. Thought it was interesting. Oh, I was doing comparative analysis. I didn't find anything too crazy. I was trying to see like who gets paid the most in each of the big businesses, because I knew Google did the less headcount reduction of the big guys. Like there was more, in my mind, there could have been more fat, but I didn't find that to be too true. Like they do get paid quite a bit at Google, but again, most of the jobs are R&D jobs, whereas Microsoft has different types of jobs in it, right? Apple has different types of jobs in it. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It talks about CEO pay and stuff like that, and CEO to pay ratio. Sundar needs a raise, I guess, but or then maybe the other guys need to cut. But anyway, there's just cool things you can do like that I haven't been able to do. So Google's back. I mean, during the tariff panic, it got down to 150, which is where it was in 2021, right? But the business has basically doubled, and the earnings per share is more than doubled since then. So you can see how the fundamentals are slowly going up as the business continues to improve over time. But every now and then you get a panic, and you can get a decent entry at a company that's just dominant, and still dominant currently. What else is there? Just in terms of opportunity set, you look at Google on a forward, right? 16 times. Walmart's at 32. Costco's at 50, right? It's just hard to. Pepsi's now cheaper. So I mean, maybe I could stop harping on Pepsi. It's finally getting probably one of the cheapest it's been for a while too. But anyway, it's cheaper relative to most other things available, while at the same time, the EPS growth is one of the best in the business, right? Like after Nvidia, Amazon, and a couple other darlings that grew really well, like Salesforce in terms of EPS growth. And those are just GAAP, so it can be gamed as well. But you can see, like, where else am I getting 16 times forward earnings with a historical EPS growth of 26%? Right? Not often. So it just screens really good value. So it tells me the market's already assuming that Google is going to lose something in the AI race, even though it's currently putting up numbers on the board. But yeah, this video is already a bit long. I'd like to know your thoughts on Google. It's a special company. It's doing a lot more than people think. It's not just sitting there allowing AI to replace it. As far as I'm concerned, it's pushing the boundaries of AI. And it has probably the highest paid staff, the best engineers in the world probably to try to do it. And a lot of resources, a lot of cash flows going to it, a lot of R&D. It's just a beast. And if it doesn't make the turn, it'll be, what do they spend the money on? Because they're spending, and they're currently putting up things right now that I'm like, okay, these are pretty impressive changes pretty quickly. And how they're able to tuck these changes right into the current search offering, or augmented in, which is very cool. And even like these deep research things are just a game changer just for me, for understanding and reading and being like, okay, what's important? What do you think the odds are? I don't have to go through like 10 different websites to try to be like, okay, this person thinks this person thinks this person. This just summarizes it and says, this is what I think and this is why. And it helps me get some insight as well into just things that I never get to see. So anyway, I'd like to know your thoughts on Google. It's a pretty amazing business, and it's at a price that's not expensive. Have a great rest of your day.